Hello, I'm MrTieDye, and today we're going to discuss the star flower. It's been one of my most popular videos, and I've had just a ton of questions on it. I've had a lot of people trying it and getting different results, so I decided I'd do a video just kind of explain the different processes, different folds and stuff that are going to give you the different results. So to start with, I'm going to demo how to do a 3-point star flower, where it's going to have just 3 petals on it. And for that one, what I do is I fold it in half, and I'm going to mark my center here. And this is something else we're going to discuss, is where the center is and where you're starting your star flower from. That's going to give you some variations also, but for now I'm going to start with just doing the number of points, the number of petals on your star flower. So if you want 3 petals on your star flower, we're going to mark this off at 60 degrees. So I'm going right from the center of the bandana here, or whatever tapestry you're working on. So I'm marking at 60 degrees at 120. And grab my edge here. So what I'm going to do is fold this into sixths, which will give me the 3 petals. And to do it in the sixths, I fold it in half, and then I'm dividing it into thirds. So with that folded, basically what I'm doing is folding over to this edge. So this first line that I drew is right under there. I'm going to fold this one up. And then I'm going to start twisting right here at this point. So if you twist that up, and it doesn't matter which edge you go up, you can go up either one. And I'm just going to go through and tie a bunch of these, and then I'm going to dye them all the same way, just so you can see the variations. Okay, so there's my first one. Now if you want a 4-petal star flower, that one we're going to fold into 8ths. So we'll fold it in half. Fold it in quarters, and then once again, this here is the center of my tapestry here, or my bandana. So I'm going to go from that point, fold that up into 8ths, pick that up, lay that out, and then we're going to twist that up from the point. I like to just try to keep this flat. I try to keep creating these creases in here and just laying those down nice and flat along the edges here. The more time you spend working on your star flower, the nicer it's going to come out. So I like to take just a little extra time and make sure everything's nice and flat. Now if you want to do a 6-petal star flower, we're going to fold it in 12ths. So to accomplish that, we'll fold it in half here. I fold in half just to find my center, so I can mark that. So there's my center once again. And then we'll open that back up. And then we're going to use the protractor, and this time we're going to mark off. The last time for the 3-petal we did 60 degrees. So for the 12-petal we're going to go 30 degrees. Get that lined up. And then every 30 degrees, so I'm going to do 30, 60, and when I'm putting these on, since this marker is so fat, I don't line this right up on 60 degrees. I line it up 1 degree off. So I do this one at 59 degrees. And when I put the dot on, then that's pretty close to the 60. We're doing 90, 120, and 150. So like I say, once I'm folding this line here, all I have to do is line this edge up with that first, or the second line there. And the first line is right in here in this crease. I'm going to fold that under. So usually I just kind of pick that up. I like to pinch the middle and the top there, and I can fold that right under. Once I have this kind of lined up, then I'm going to fold along this line, line this edge up with that line. And then we're going to pinch at the top and at the bottom here, pick this up and fold under. And then this last one will fold right over top. And then we're going to pinch and twist right from that center spot right there. Okay, so now there is the 6-petal star flower. Next we're going to do the 8-petal. That's the one that I did the original video on, was the 8-petal star flower. So we're going to fold this up in half, fold it in quarters. And once again, this here is the center of my tapestry down here. So we're going to fold that up. And you can even fold these, both of these folds at the same time, so when you flip it over you have just one more. So I'm going to fold that edge up right along the middle there. And then I'll flip that over. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to fold all the way over. And this time I'm going for this edge here. And then we'll fold that back. And then back again. And that lays that up there on the edge. And this here is going to be the 8-petal. So this is the one in the original tapestry that I did. Okay, that's going to be the 8-petal star flower. Now I'm going to show a couple of the variations of things that I've seen just from people twisting from a different location than the center of the tapestry. Just so you can see what it looks like. Like I say, none of the tapestries were bad. They just didn't turn out how the person intended. Okay, so now the next one, I'm just going to show some variations. If you lose track of the center, or if you intentionally want to fold it a different way, you'll know what you're going to get. So here's the center of the tapestry. This here is where we usually do our folds at on the regular star flower. So we'd fold it up with the center being right here. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to fold off of this edge where there's 2 points here instead of just the center. If that makes sense. So I'm going to treat this like the center. So I'm going to fold this edge up. And then what I'm going to do is fold that back. We're going to flip it over, fold this one back. And then we're going to go ahead and twist from right here. So we didn't use the center of the tapestry for this one. We went off of the edge. So this is going to put 2 half circle star flowers on the 2 edges of your tapestry. So, and that's not a bad thing. It's just if you don't want it that way, then you need to make sure you keep track of where the center is. And all of these bandanas I'm using, they've been soaked in soda ash and spun out, so they're just barely damp. It's just easier to fold them that way, and I'll probably let these sit for a while until they're completely dry. So I'm going to show one more variation. So we're going to fold this in half. So now this here is the center, and these are the outer edges over here. I have 4 separate points over here. So what we're going to do is twist around, and that's where we're going to treat this like the center. So we're going to make our point over here. So I'm going to fold this edge up, and then I'm going to fold it back over on itself. And then we'll flip this over, and we're going to flip this last one back. And then that's where we're going to twist from. And this here is going to give us the star flower on the 4 corners. So basically, when you open your tapestry up, you're going to do a star flower on the 4 edges instead of out of the middle. So that's not a bad thing. It's just if that's not what you want, then don't fold from the corners. That's why you need to pay attention to where the center of the tapestry is. So usually when I fold it into quarters, then I pay attention that this here is my actual point, and that's where I fold from. But these variations are kind of fun also. Six star flowers, I'm going to dye them all the same way. And then this one here, I'm going to dye a little bit differently. So I'm going to fold this up just like the regular star flower to get the 8-petaled star flower. So I fold in quarters. And then I make sure that I'm starting from the center of my tapestry, which is this point here. So I'll fold up my 2 edges here. And fold one more time, and then I can pick that up, flip it straight over, okay, we're ready to put some dye on these things. So what I have here, this here, I'm going to start with this one. This is one of the 8 pointers, and I'm going to dye it differently than the rest. So what I'm going to do, instead of dyeing in the pieces of pie like I normally do for the star flower, I'm going to dye this whole thing in 2 colors. I'm going to dye the one side one color and one the other. And just because I like the extreme contrast, I'm going to do this in purple and orange. I do have a video on laying color down where I show you how to lay orange and purple next to each other without getting a whole lot of brown. And one of the things is putting the purple on first and letting it spread as far as it's going to spread. So that's why I'm doing this one first. I'm going to put the purple on and then set it aside while I dye the other ones. And then we'll come back to this. So I'm just coating that really good. The thing with the star flower, because it's folded so many layers, what I like to do is to dye it until I start seeing just a little bit of color shining through on the other side. So I'll put dye on, let it sit for a while, and of course the thicker areas are going to need more dye. So when I pick it up and look underneath, that's kind of what I'm looking for, is just to see if the dye has soaked through to the other side. And I can already see it here in the middle a little bit, and now I'm just kind of waiting for that outer edge. That's the thickest part, so I'm just adding more dye to it. And I think that might be good. We'll check that in a little bit, so we'll set that aside. Now what I'm going to do is, just so that you can really see the variations in the star flower, in the different ways of folding it and dyeing it, I'm going to dye these all the same way. Let's back out here. So I'm going to dye these all in rainbow, just so that you can tell. So this here is my 3-petaled 4 petaled, 6 petaled, and then these are all 8 petaled. This one I'm going to dye the normal way, or well, I guess I'm going to dye them all. But this one here was folded from the middle of the star flower, from the point. This one here was folded from the edge, and this one was folded from the outer corners, where the 4 corners. I tied those up as the center. So when I'm dyeing in rainbows, I usually will start with the yellow first. Put my first piece of pie on. These are the 8 petaled ones, so they're a little bit thicker, so I'm just trying to squirt a little extra dye into all of these and to kind of tap a little bit just to try to get the dye to soak in a little further. The other thing you can do is use a cuticle pusher. So you just take that and squeeze on it, and I can kind of see the dye puddle up a little bit, and then when I release the pressure, that dye soaks down inside. So whether you have a cuticle pusher or another tool, the main thing is just that it has a nice smooth edge on it so that you don't risk tearing into the t-shirt. So that's just a handy tool for good dye saturation. So I usually like to get all of my colors on, and then I start checking the other side and see how the saturation is coming through. You try to get one color saturated all the way through, then it might spread out further on the other side, or on this side, before it gets all the way through to the other side. So by putting all of the colors on, you've kind of locked them all in their place. They might still spread together a little bit, but they're all going to kind of maintain their own space. Okay, and then while I have the purple in hand, I'm going to check this one. So I can kind of see the purple soaking through there in the crack. So I know that it's getting in there, but I still don't see any in the really thick part. So I'm going to go over this thick part just a little bit more with the purple dye and let it soak in while I finish dyeing these other ones. And then we'll come back to that one again. So, and that's what you have to do with these. If you're dyeing and letting the color soak in, if you can set it aside while you work on something else, that's perfect. So now these ones, I'm going to pick them up and look. And on these first 3 where there's fewer layers, the color, I can see the color soaking through. The only one that's missing here at close examination is the purple. It seems to be one of the colors that doesn't spread quite as far, so purple is one that I usually like to make sure I check for good saturation on. And I think the blue, no, the blue is good. The green needs just a little bit. Because as soon as I see it start soaking through on the other side, then I know that in the middle, all of those creases have dye in them. But if you immediately put dye on both sides, then that middle can be a mystery. You might not know how much dye saturation you have. So this is just one way when you have a lot of folds, is to kind of check that saturation before you start dyeing the other side. So I'm just going to go through each one of these and do the same thing. I'm just going to look and see what ones need more color to them, and they probably all need just a little bit. Another thing, I don't know if you can see it, but there's like white fuzz, and that is another indication that something needs more dye. If you get the fibers standing up, that's just some of the cotton fibers saying, hey, I don't have any dye on me. So kind of pay attention. If you see the white fuzzies that may be down inside, you need a little extra dye. Now I'm going to use my cuticle pusher just to kind of push that dye in further. I'm going to work on just one color at a time, so I'm going to go through and do each one of them. And I like to see just a little bit of dye kind of well up when I push on this. If I don't see any dye, then that means it's pretty dry in there, and it definitely needs more. Another thing, when I'm dyeing from just one side, sometimes that pushes the excess liquid out. So I can see when I set this down on the table that I have clear liquid on here, and what that means is that the soda ash, the liquid soda ash, is slowly coming out, and that's a good thing. You can get some of that out, and it gives you better dye saturation. So I'll push on this while it's on this rag. Let's see. We'll scoot this over just so you can see what I'm doing here. So I got this purple one on this rag, and I'm just pushing it, trying to get the purple to soak through, and by having it on the rag, the dryness of the rag is pulling some of that excess liquid out. So now I can start to see the purple is soaking through there. So now this will be ready for my next color. I'm going to put orange on here just to really give some nice contrast and show what happens when you dye the star flower in this manner. So yeah, I can tell on this rag I got liquid out of there, so I think that is going to be pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and dye this one, and then I'm going to flip these and finish dyeing those. So on this one, I'm putting orange on the second side. I'm going to slowly look and see, as long as I can see just a little bit of color. You don't want like the full-on color coming through, but I want to see at least a little bit. That just means that there's good saturation in the middle. So I just check each one of these, and I'm looking at each one of the colors just to see if I have any indication of dye coming through. Yeah, and as I squeeze all of these, I can see a little bit of dye well up around this. So that's telling me that I should have decent saturation in there. And a lot of times when you dye it this way, when you have the dye coming through from the other side, and you can see that, then when you put your coat on the second side, usually one coat will do it. Sometimes I'll have to go in and touch up a color a little bit, but these are all looking pretty good as I'm squishing on this. And let me see if I can zoom in and show you what I'm seeing here. How far can we go? Which one do I have? Okay, this is the one. So when I squish on that yellow, I don't know if you can see that on the camera or not, but I can see liquid well up in there. Squeeze on the green just a little bit. Yeah, there, I think you can see a little bit of that liquid. So that's telling me that I have dye saturation in there, and when I remove the cuticle pusher, as long as it still looks like it's kind of wet, sometimes I'll pull that away and the dye will soak in and it'll look almost completely dry. And that's the time when you need to add more color to it. If you squish on it, you see liquid, and then you let go and then it goes completely dry, add more liquid. Or if you squeeze on it and you don't see any liquid at all well up, I mean, you just want a little bit, you don't want it to be sloppy, but you should see a little bit of liquid well up, and that tells me on these multiple layers that I have dye saturation in there. Okay, so that looks good. And let's check this one here. Yep. Same thing. Okay. So I think these are all good. So I'm going to let these set up for 48 hours. I'll wash them, and I might even do a reveal video just so that you can see each one of these and how they come out. So thank you for watching. Please like and share my videos.